If tomorrow all the things were gone I worked for all my life, I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my God above for living here today. The flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Hi guys, welcome back. So we have a special broadcast tonight. I know my regular Citizen Watch was last night, and we had an interesting conversation with attorney Mr. Ramsey. Sorry about that. And but tonight is a little more in depth. So we're going to touch some nerves tonight, guys. We're going to make some noise about a very, very important cause to me. It touches my heart. There's video that has gone viral, that has been made national news. We're talking about fathers' rights movements. So it is something I am 100% behind as a candidate and as a person. So this is very important to me. So tonight I have graciously been awarded time with a fathers' rights movement activist that heads this group. And he has done a lot of work. He's trying to make a lot of headway. And hopefully when I'm elected, we can change some laws. So with that being said, let's bring out Kenneth Rosa. And again, he's from the Fathers' Rights Movement. Hi, Kenneth. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you on. So this is an important cause. It's an important movement. It's not just a cause, it's a movement. And there's laws that needs to be changed. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And the first thing we're going to talk about is, what does it mean to you when those words fathers' rights movement come to mind in the state of Illinois?
So it's really a circular discussion or a circular argument. When you talk about the fathers' rights movement, you're talking about mothers' rights, you're talking about children's rights, because we all have the rights to each other. We are all protected under the Constitution to have, the 14th Amendment, to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and justice for all, and red, white, and blue. And so that includes fathers, unfortunately, for the groups that don't want to include fathers. And the statistics from the United States government are that in a separation or divorce, mothers get custody 83% of the time. Fathers have to split their 17% with DFS, foster care, parents, grandparents, anyone else that may have a claim to that. So fathers don't even get their 17%. They get what's left over. And so it's not even a close call to say there's not a parental disparity in the way that we do business in the family courts.
Right. So there's a video going viral. I'm going to touch base on it because I think it's important to bring up. I think this gentleman's name needs to be said and heard. It's heard all over the internet, but there's some argument of whether it was self-defense or not. Now, if anyone's actually watched the video, to me, it's clearly not self-defense. This is very sad. So can you tell me a little bit about that video shortly, briefly, and then your take on it and where your movement stands with that video?
So the video you're speaking of is the Chad Reed is the father. Chad Reed is divorced from his ex-wife, Christine, and apparently they've had a very contentious parental co-parenting thing where she keeps the child from the father at her whim and will. And unfortunately, in Texas, that is a jailable offense. It's a state felony. It's called Penal Code 25.03. You cannot keep the child from a non-custodial parent in the state of Texas, or it is a felony. So, unfortunately, for the Reed family, which they'll be on the Father's Rights Movement for their broadcast tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, Mr. Reed was killed by the mother's boyfriend, which happens to be a statistic that is very unpublished, but is a very eye-opening statistic, that the child is 71.2% more likely to be abused at the maternal home by her boyfriend and the mother than anyone they'll ever meet in their life. You can find those statistics at the Child Maltreatment Reports 2001 through 2013. They changed the game in 2013 because that doesn't fit the narrative that all fathers are abusive. And so now they don't even have a mother or a father classification. It's just parents. So they convoluted the subject and the issue from the national statistics. But back to the Reed case, the dad went to the property. He tried to pick up his kid on his parental court-ordered time, which gives him legal business to be on the property. He's speaking to the mother, his ex-wife, and the boyfriend smiles, leaves, goes in the house, gets a gun, introduces a very convoluted situation that the father ends up being killed. Unfortunately, Texas is a castle law doctrine, is a stand your ground doctrine state. And in the course of that, a father was killed. Unfortunately for the shooter, the castle doctrine and the stand your law grounds don't apply, because in the commission of a felony, which is 2503 Penal Code, you cannot claim self-defense. So this father was killed while trying to pick up his child in the commission of a felony. Someone died. That's felony murder under the state statutes. Now, the shooter was married to a local family court judge. In the beginning of the story, there was a frenzy because everyone thought that the ex-wife was the family court judge. It's not. She is married to the shooter while he is having an affair with the person that was killed, the father, ex-wife. And so it was a very convoluted story in the beginning, but once you sort it all out, the family court judge is not involved in that. But to keep the conflict of interest out of the way, they gave the case to the to the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton's office, to see if there would be any charges for the shooter in that case, because he basically, in my opinion, murdered that father simply because he was trying to pick up his child.
Right. And that's very tragic. It should never come to that. I've never personally understood why children are used as pawns anyway. Being divorced with my children's father at the time, I was the ex-wife that went into court and paid his fines so he wouldn't go to jail, and told him I didn't want child support, and I never kept him from him, and I had to make him see him. So it's interesting. Usually a lot of females I talk to, they don't feel like their first instance is, well, what if the father's abusive? Well, okay, then that's a different case. But to me, the dads that are out there that want to see their children, that make the effort and do what they're supposed to do, if they got to pay child support, okay. But there's some laws that needs to be changed about that. And I had heard you talk about it. We had a conversation, and you mentioned two specific things that need to be changed, if I'm not mistaken. So as far as it goes for Illinois, what are the two things that, or what needs to be changed in order to give the father's rights ample fairness, I guess? How can we fix this?
So we understand that there are civil rights issues. Okay, 100 and something years ago, there was the women's suffrage. They didn't have the right to vote. They didn't have the right to do anything unless your husband said so. And then all of the men came forward and they said, yo, what's happening to the women is not okay. We need to change that. And so we did. And then in the 1960s, we had the civil rights issue of the 1960s, to where we said, you know, people shouldn't be drinking out of a different water fountain. They shouldn't have to use a side door that isn't for the rest of us. I want to use the same door that they use. And so all of the white community got together with the black community, and we changed that. Civil rights is not okay. It doesn't matter who it's against. So in the 2020s, what we have is a civil rights violation or deprivation of human rights against fathers, because 83% of the time you go to court and the courts automatically give custody to the maternal person. There was the tender years doctrine, which has been thrown out as junk science several decades ago, but yet we're still following those guidelines and rules. So what we need to do is we need to set in place a 50-50 equal shared parenting rebuttable presumption. And what that means is after a separation or divorce, you started an equal shared parenting goalpost. You shouldn't have to jump through enough hoops and reach a target to become an equal parent. We are either all equal or we're not. So once the separation or divorce happens and paternity is established, the father should be on the same playing field as the mother. And we can work backwards from there, which is what the rebuttable presumption is. If one parent, doesn't matter if it's the father, could be the mom. Maybe the mom has a chemical dependency. That could be alcohol, that could be drugs, that could be child abuse, that could be maybe the parents live on one side of the state in Illinois as opposed to the other. Obviously, a 50-50, 1 week on, 1 week off, 2-3 days, whatever the situation is. There's about 5 situations that work out for equal shared parenting. Maybe that doesn't work because of the distance that you live in the state of Illinois. But we feel from the Father's Rights Movement that the mom and the father should determine what's best for them, as opposed to having a judge step on the father's neck and always say, you're always going to be an every other weekend parent, and that's the only way there is. And sorry about your luck.
Yeah, absolutely. That doesn't need to happen. So when we talk about fathers' rights and we talk about, even mother's rights too, like you said, the children's rights, how did we get to this point? I'm not understanding how we got to a point where now fathers are being shot to death for picking up their kids. Is it, how can something so simple that's so easy to solve be such a difficult thing? I'm not understanding that.
Perfect question. So in the, we swung the pendulum too far. Moms didn't have rights 100 years ago because you were a female. Simply being born a woman, you had 0 rights. Right. Then we swung the pendulum and we said women should have the rights. Bam. And so we swung it, but it went too far. And I refuse to believe that any politician in the history of mankind ever said, I'm going to instate these policies, and 40 years from now, it's absolutely going to decimate society. But there are 70 negative societal behavioral traits that can be recognized from a fatherless home. Those are 61% more likely to use illegal narcotics if you come from a fatherless home. 70% plus more likely to become teen pregnant if you come from a fatherless home. Not likely to graduate. 81% more likely to go to prison. 63% more likely to commit suicide if you come from a fatherless home. So all of these 70 negative traits, and I can keep going for the rest of the broadcast and all of the traits that can be attributed to fatherless homes, come back to the fact that we as a society put in place in the 1960s and 70s for the quote unquote deadbeat dads, because we had dads that you couldn't locate. You could, as soon as you made the dad mad, he was out, bam, and we couldn't find him. And we didn't have the social media. We didn't have the ways to track him down. We didn't have all these things. And so whether it was his fault, wasn't his fault, because we know we have gatekeeping moms that stomp the father out and they just don't want to deal with the chaos to see their own children. Whoever's fault it was, we had this societal issue of missing fathers. Fast forward 50 years, and now we have fathers that are purposely getting stomped out by the family courts by the Division of Family Services because it's a huge billions of dollars a year incentive from the federal government to incentivize the removal of the father. When these policies started, like I said, I don't want to attribute any politician that they would make policies that 50 years from now would decimate this societal impact. But when these policies started, we had a 23% Black fatherless home rate. Now that these policies have been instituted and we fast forward 45, 50 years, we have 77% of all Black children in the Black community are born into fatherless homes. That's 3 out of 4. We've destroyed the Black community because of these policies. And then they instituted these policies because they figured out, well, if we can destroy the Black community, we can perpetuate those policies onto the white community, the Hispanic community, and we can make it into a $60 to $90 billion a year federal reimbursement payments to the states from the federal government for the collection of child support. And then if you lock up enough fathers, you suspend enough driver's licenses, you issue enough arrest warrants, you go after enough deadbeat dads, whatever your case may be, there's a bunch of federal incentives that are in place, then you get a yearly multi-billion-dollar a year bonus. So we've incentivized the removal of the father, chasing them down, beating them down. And what that amounts to is that there are 21 to 26 million kids that haven't seen their father in over a fiscal year. I did not want to be placed in that statistic. I spent tens of thousands. I spent $250,000 to not be placed in that statistic. I have a court order to see my son every other weekend, and I still have not seen him within 3 years. I have some of the best attorneys in the city of St. Louis, but the family court still won't allow me to see my kid because she chooses not to abide by the parental plan. That's not how this system was intended or was ever supposed to work.
That's a lot of high numbers. And a lot of sadness, it seems, because, again, the kids are being used as pawns. It's, we've lost our way on so many different issues in the state of Illinois that, this is just one of the puzzle pieces. And unfortunately, this is a bigger puzzle piece, I think, than it needs to be. I really don't understand, let's talk about Chicago, for instance. Mm-hmm. When you talk about the Black community and the fatherless homes, and we'll kind of, focus a little bit on that, that always attributes to, okay, well, if you don't, you don't have the male role model there. So that attributes to, or it doesn't automatically attribute to, because I know plenty of people that turned out just fine. So I don't want to put that statistic on it. But
we always have an outlier of cases that statistically in probabilities, they ended up turning out like decent human beings, but they were 75% more likely not to.
Right. And when you don't have that role model, in the children's lives, the father, then you have to worry about, is the mother stable enough? And if they are, then, it's really odd, because I think daughters are more influenced by their fathers than boys are, in a way. Just because I am a girl, and I'm daddy's girl. So it's kind of, we learn what kind of man we need to be from our fathers, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So when the father's not in the picture, they don't know what to look for. They don't understand how a man's supposed to treat them if the father's not in the picture. Point and take, I have a friend, his daughter is 5 years old, and he takes her on daddy-daughter dates. He shows her what a gentleman needs to be. So I think, and I'm not saying, I'm a mother. I got sole custody of my children, but that's just because it really wasn't in the best interest for my ex-husband to get them, but I never stopped him from seeing them. In fact, I had to make him see them. So that's a little different story. But I have friends, me and you have talked, Cash Jackson, Josh Allen, They're both
Perfectly-
fighting for their kids.
Perfectly good guys.
Yeah, great good guys. I love Cash, and Josh Allen was actually my landlord in Peoria. That's how I met him. So, and he's fighting for his kids. So, um, knowing what a great guy he is, you know, knowing how much they love their kids, you know, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When we talk about government, I'm like, between Democrat and Republican, you know, I'm kind of going to give you a view about it. I'm like, why don't we just sit down, shut up, and talk like human beings? And it's the same thing with fathers' rights with moms and dads. You know, there was a time when those parents said vows. There was a time when they were deeply, madly in love with each other.
Exactly.
And how they go from that heartfelt butterfly in love feeling to our children are now chess pieces. And the worst game in history is beyond me. And
I actually have a fathers' rights movement slogan that is love your children more than you hate your ex.
I like that slogan.
And the reason for that is because we have incentivized the removal of the father for whatever reason, whether it was intentional, whether it wasn't. There's huge amounts of money that go to the incentivization of the domestic violence shelter. And what I mean by that is that you can go to any city in the United States of America and there is a domestic violence shelter for women that are being abused by their counterpart, whether it is false or legitimate. There are only 2 in the United States of America, 2 for fathers to go to with their children if they're being abused by their female counterpart. Now, from the FBI statistics and from a whole lot of other studies, we know that domestic violence happens pretty much equally. It can be the mom or it can be, well, I shouldn't say the mom. I should say the female counterpart or the male counterpart, because sometimes there's not children involved. But if a male goes to the family courts, we're frowned upon. What kind of a sissy are you? What kind of a wussy are you that you would need a restraining order because she tried to harm you, you know? And then the female is always granted the silver bullet or the upside in the domestic violence industry because, you know, we have to protect you at all costs, whether it's a legitimate case or not. And so here's to err on the side of caution. That's what they tell you. To err on the side of caution, here's a restraining order. I just covered a story today out of Florida. A Florida representative reported on a political opponent that is, I'm not going to get into all the politics or tell you which side's Republican, Democrat, or whatever. But anyway, his political opponent is a female, and she has filed 10, not 1, not 2, not 3, 10 restraining orders against a sitting Florida representative because she's a political opponent. And so therefore he has to spend, whether it's out of his pocket or whether it's out of the state of Florida's pocket, he has to spend $10,000 to $20,000 per time she files these things to get out of these things. So we see an abuse in the restraining order industry to leverage or get control of the kids, the assets, and all of that type of thing. So there needs to be reform there. Then you go to the parental aspect of it. You know, moms get custody 83% of the time. Moms file for divorce 81% of the time. Is that indicative of whoever files first gets the children? I don't know. We don't have analytics on that. If the fathers' rights movement had their way, we would have analytics in every single court across the United States of America. Does the judge give custody of the children to the mom 99% of the time? Does he give custody of the children to the dad 99% of the time? If so, why is he always giving those type of judgments? What are the analytics of the GAL? Why don't we have cameras in these courtrooms? Why are we issuing gag orders in family court where it's illegal in any other type of court? So there's a whole lot of accountability that could be set in place to correct these issues, but then it takes away from all of the billions of dollars these people are making from the federal government. Plus, you get the local cartels that are fleecing their county or state parents for a wealth redistribution from the parents to the court actors, and then the kids are left with no future because all of the money's in their bank accounts.
Right. So I know you can't see this, but I can. We've got a little bit of a debate going in the comment sections. So a real good friend of mine, Manel, and a real good friend of mine, Charles, Chuck.
You can pop them up on the bottom and I'll be able to see you.
I will. Hold on a second. So the debate, before I pop this up, I'm going to pop your guys' comments up so Rosa can hear it or see it. And the debate is it society or is it the parents? So let's pop up.
Good question.
It is. So let's pop this up. Let's see. Well, let's start with this one right here. Let's see if I can. I don't know if it's really long. Let's see if it kills the.
Well, now. Okay. I used to teach inner city kids here in Springfield, Illinois, not Missouri. Most were black. The dads left the mom and won't accept responsibility. So your arguments about the black community aren't valid. Fathers decide how much they want to be involved. It's not society. It's a personal decision.
Okay, now hold tight. I'll let you chew on that for a minute. And then we're going to throw Chuck's up here.
Yeah, let's see Chuck's.
And let's see. First, Chuck's. Where's Chuck's? There it is.
That's a perfectly valid debate, though, from her.
It is.
Charles, I'm one of the statistics as well. I pay support for a daughter I can only see at reasonable times with reasonable notice, and it's never a good time for the mother, so I don't see her. And that's what we see in a lot of them. So Charles's comment, in my opinion.
Now here's the other one.
It is society. I don't choose to not see my daughter. Her mother has all the power to deny visitation at her will. I fought for 17 years. Charles's comment is perfect. So let me see the first lady's name again, just so I can address
Monel.
Okay. So Monel's debate or side of it is that the black community fathers don't want to be involved. But Charles's comment is a perfect example, along with mine and along with the millions. I'm not just here in the United States of America. I am worldwide. The millions of fathers that have to deal with this issue. Why does a father have to fight to be in his child's life? If the mother says he can't be, he can't be. Period. Dads get tired of spending tens of thousands of fifties of hundreds of thousands of dollars just to see their children. There's actually a statistic out there that fathers will fight for 3 years, and then they get tired of spending all of that money and then they walk away. They just resign themselves to the fact that they're going to have to pay child support on these kids, that the infighting and all of this chaos and insanity and everything else can just go away. They'll pay their child support, and hopefully to God they can see their child after the child's 18. We see that in all of the communities, not just black communities, white communities. We see that across the world. So my case in particular, I have, and this goes back to Chuck's particular point, I have a court order to see my child every other weekend. Every other weekend. It states black and white. I see my kids every other weekend. Yet I haven't seen my child in 3 years. That's not the father. That's the mother. You know why? Because she's not obligated by society to abide by the parental plans, the rules, and no one will make her. I filed 46 interference with custody reports in the state of Missouri. It is a Class D felony. Matthew Becker, the Franklin County prosecutor of Franklin County, would not prosecute her because he's trying to get reelected. He doesn't want to be seen as a person that targets mothers in an unfavorable light. So I respectfully have to disagree with Monel's assessment that black fathers don't want to be there. They just don't want to deal with the chaos.
Good point. Now, she also said the father can work out a custody agreement before court. What would your response be to that? Because my response would instantly, the first thing I thought was, well, yeah, he can if the mom follows it.
Correct. So you get some states. There are a few states, Not very many, but there's a few states that you have to go to mediation before you can even go to court. Now, here's where this is very interesting. So Switzerland has laws in place that you cannot take your co-parent or your divorcing parent to court unless there's like 10 parameters that are met. So they don't have a lot of litigation there. You literally have to work this stuff out without going to court. So Switzerland is the model we want to follow. They don't have a lot of litigation. They don't have a lot of not shared parenting. And so Switzerland is the model we want to follow. What happens is if you have these states that have mediation involved, then perhaps you can work out a settlement that's 50-50 or close to as 50-50. Maybe, like I said, maybe it doesn't work for both parents, but those parents should be able to decide that amongst themselves, not having a judge step on one or the other party's neck and say, you'll abide by this or you'll go to prison. So what we need to see is a model that favors like Switzerland, to where you go to a mediation first, because what happens is the attorneys, the bar association, her attorney, his attorney, they get in there and they say, this is a dog fight. And whichever one of you dogs slings the most mud or bites the other one's neck first, you're going to get custody of these kids. And so you have two parents that are literally or figuratively trying to kill each other just so they can remain a relevant parent in their children's lives. We need to take the chaos. We need to take the billable hours. We need to take the issues out of the parental time and just have it to where if you get divorced, please know that you're going to split the time with your other co-parent. So either A, if you don't want to do that, stay with your co-parent, or B, just know that they're going to be with the other parent 50% of the time. The Bar Association argued for years that 50-50 equal shared parenting would drive up litigation. The domestic violence industry argued for years that 50-50 equal shared parenting would drive up domestic violence. We now have 4 years of statistics out of the state of Kentucky. The state of Kentucky was the first to institute 50-50 equal shared parenting laws. We now have one that is even a better gold standard in Arkansas. And for the 2022 legislative session, we have about 8 or 10 that are in the running for that. But going back to Kentucky, domestic violence went down. Litigation went down. It was double digits. The population increased. Your fallacy arguments were bullcrap. It worked for the people of your state, and the children have better lives by having 50-50 equal shared parenting laws in place.
We have more comments. With that being said, so Tabitha Carson, who heads, she is the CEO of Monumental, let me get this right. Monumental Movement in Chicago for children. And she fights hard for kids in many instances, abused kids, just anything. And she says, the mothers and children, but she made a comment about the fathers. So she actually said this.
Tabitha, I'd love to connect with her. That sounds like a great organization. Fathers are getting raw deals. I already like her already. There are fathers who work hard, and also the child lives with him. Why? Because mom is a heavy drinker. I deal with cases like this. I like this topic, Allison. It goes against the narrative. We need to have a presumption of equal shared parenting in place. Monumental March in Chicago. I'm going to get with Tabitha, and we're gonna sign her up and become a partner with their group.
She's an amazing person.
It goes against the narrative. The narrative is that all fathers are abusive, and they can have custody if they can prove they're not abusive. Unfortunately, the statistics, you're 54% more likely to be abused by your mother. Now, we can argue and debate the reasons for that. Moms are always saddled with the majority of custody situations, 83% of the time. So obviously, if the society is throwing all of the responsibility of two parents onto the mother, and you only get a break 4 days a month to send them over to dad's house, obviously she's going to be frustrated. Obviously she's going to have issues. Obviously she's not going to be able to rebuild her life. There's actually a study from, and I don't want to misquote it, but it's like the single Her name's Emma Johnson. So she runs a group, and it's like the Million Moms, or she has a huge following. We're talking huge. And they did a study that showed that you're 31% more likely as a single mother to have an income of 6 figures or more if you share parenting with the father, because you have time to re-educate yourself. You have, 50% of the time to go back to school. You have 50% of the time to rebuild relationships, to expand your community, to expand your contacts, to expand all of your horizons, as opposed to a mom that only gets 4 days a month, that has to deal with these kids, whether she wants to or not, because that's what a court decided. So you're 31% more likely to make 6 figures or more, as opposed to the little measly child support check that the government is actually using women. I hate to say it, but they're using women as pawns to create this money-making scheme for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You can make more money if you share parenting, because you have time to make connections. You have time to go re-educate yourself. You have time to improve your life. You have time to further your career, as opposed to accepting this status quo that we've had for 50 years, that all dads should have every other weekends and maybe a dinner visit if you're lucky. And then mom should be saddled with the entire burden, whether they want to be or not.
Well, I think, when you tell these stories and you talk about these statistics, by the way, Charles Erickson wants a friend's request. So he's a great guy, amazing man. So when we talk about the statistics, I think of a story that happened not too long ago. Well, it's been a while now, where a friend of mine brought him and his son in my home. And because the mom and him were never married,
Mm-hmm.
in the state of Illinois, it didn't matter if he's dad or not. And the cop even looked and said, "Oh my God, you can't deny that child. He looks just like you." And he did. And he took him from her because she was unfit. Well, she had the rest of her kids taken away. But because Illinois, according to the police officer, said it's a mother state, and so it doesn't matter how you feel or what you think, or if you're the best parent. The child has to go back to the mom until you go to court.
Correct.
Now, I'm sorry, but that sucks. That's bad.
You and I didn't even get into the statistics. So we touched on the statistic that moms are 83% more likely than fathers to get custody. That's married moms. If you go to the unmarried fathers, which 41% of all kids are no longer born into wedlock, the family courts have destroyed marriage. Nobody wants to get married anymore because they don't want to lose half their crap. They don't want to go through these contentious divorces. They don't want to be in a no-fault divorce where he or she was cheating and they're made out to look like the bad guy. So the family courts have destroyed marriage. 41% of all children are born into what we would quote unquote say are unwed parents. 41%. Out of those 41%, 100% of the custody goes to the mother, because we can tell who the mom is. We have to have a paternity petition for the father. So dad has to go file a paternity petition. The birth certificate don't mean squat. You can wipe yourself with it. You can set it on fire. It don't mean squat. It is literally a Department of Human Services statistic to tell who is alive and who is dead. It does not have anything to do with your rights. As a father, you have to go file a paternity petition with your local county court. And then even after you're granted to be the father has to sue or file a parenting plan to have the same rights as the mother. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a system of equality. What we have is you're a dad, you're a lesser human being. And even if you establish paternity that the child is yours, well, you can file a lawsuit and maybe you'll get every other weekend, a couple dinner visits a month, and you better be lucky you got that. So 41%, that's a lot that are born to unwed parents. 83% go to the mom. You can't even argue that the system isn't a discriminatory deprivation of human rights.
No, you can't. And, with my friend, I'm sorry, but whoever made up the rule that just because you're not married, but you made a child that you have no rights. I mean, literally, he had none. He got his son taken out of his arms and given straight to the mom. Oh, and it didn't matter that she was unfit. It didn't matter that she didn't have food in her house. It didn't matter that her electricity was turned off. It didn't matter that her water was turned off. That child still went to the parent. And then she lost them all anyway. And because she lost him, he lost the right to even fight.
So fathers we have to file a lawsuit to be an equal parent. We have to file all these papers to be considered an equal parent. And then you run into these cases, and we just posted on it on the Fathers' Rights Movement out of Missoula, Montana. I guess that's like the capital or whatever. But anyway, mom had a history of mental health. And so the Division of Family Services stepped in. They took the kids. They said, yo, like there's some problems over at mom's house. They can't be with mom. We're giving them to the dad. The dad was doing just fine with them. They go to family court. The family court judge steps in and he says, whoa, she's the mom. She's got to have those kids. You get every other weekend and every other Wednesday. And that's what they gave dad. Except now both of those kids are dead. So the father couldn't even be considered she killed both of them. So the father couldn't even be considered an equal parent in a case where there was a clear instance of mental health problems, that she had abused these children, and the kids have been taken from her multiple times. They've been given to the state. Dad gets them, and then the state gives them back to the father. So we're not trying to bash moms. What we're saying is that there is an issue when a person with mental health issues repeatedly is still given the children back because father can't be considered an equal parent simply because mom is mom and the kids ended up dead from it.
And how do they justify that afterwards? Like,
it doesn't matter how they justify it, because if you file a lawsuit, exactly like I did in the state of Missouri, I filed a lawsuit against all of my court actors, my guardian ad litem, my therapist. It was one of the first ones in the United States of America, in the way it was worded and fashioned. They come back and they say, because they work for the state, it does not matter. It does not matter that they broke federal laws, that they broke state laws, that they broke guidelines of the Missouri State Supreme Court. It doesn't matter the injustices they carried against you. Simply because they work for the state, they have quasi-judicial immunity and they can't be held accountable.
Wow. Doesn't follow rules, and sounds like our governor. Sorry, just had to put that in there. So 2022 is the next election for Illinois. I happen to be running.
You happen to be running. Good for you.
I am. U.S. Senate.
I hear you're up in the polls.
Yes, I am. So the only reason I brought that up was because I can help change some of that. I can spearhead it, and being in Washington, there's a lot of pull there. There's a lot of things that I can do. So, and I told you before the show started, I said, I win, I want you in my office the next day. So
appreciate that.
And it's not, I'm definitely not against women, but at the same time, I don't care which if one parent has an issue, you need to be grown and say, okay, let's let them stay with the other one until I can get help with my issue or whatever. Communication is key.
Communication is key.
Critical thinking and communication is all it's going to take.
And equality is equality.
Right.
Either way. You
Definitely.
We're either all equal or we're not.
Or we're not. Yeah. You can't be hypocritical about it. You can't say, oh, well, we're equal, but you're not because of this. Well, no, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So, let's fast forward to 2022 in November, just for the sake of argument.
Okay.
And I actually win. Planning on it, by the way. I'm taking Tammy Duckworth out of that seat as fast as I can.
I've heard you're up by big numbers.
Yeah, I actually am. I got told the other day, it shocked me in a way. I'm glad, but I was like, really? Cool. But no, it's because I do things differently. I really do. I go to the people. I have this podcast where I let people use the platform and say what they got to say. I don't shut them up. I don't censor them. I don't do anything as long as you're not rude, disrespectful, or cussing. I don't care what you say. You're allowed to speak your mind. And that's part of why I started this, was because the number one, this earplug is not staying in my ear. This number one problem that I heard from every single voter across the line was, I do not have a voice. And part of the people that don't have a voice is fathers. And a lot of people don't. And pretty much everybody in Illinois feels like they don't have a voice. So that's why I launched
So
this.
if we're talking about Illinois politics in the general, you guys have lost 31% of your population. 31%. Yep. 3 out of 10 people have fled the state of Illinois for whatever their issues may be. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's they feel that their voice isn't heard, their taxes are too high, whatever. 31% of your population is like, yo, dog, I'm out.
Yeah.
Obviously, something is not working. So they need new blood like yourself.
Right. And I think our governor is a big problem with that.
I mean, your last 3 or 4 governors are in federal penitentiaries. Like,
yes.
The joke is that like, yo, if you need license plates, it's the Illinois governor making them.
So, someone has serious questions for you. Sorry, I just saw that. Okay, we'll get to you, Tabitha. Hold on. We got some time. So my special broadcasts are normally, I said 30, but a special broadcast is like an hour. So we needed that anyway. But that's okay. I have fun. It's no big deal.
That's good.
So back to what I was saying, let's fast forward to 2022 in November. And let's say I'm elected. What do you want me to change specifically?
So here's the thing. Okay. We have candidates that are running on one party platforms. There is a candidate in the Texas House of Representatives that is running for U.S. Congress, and his only one issue, he's not running on anything else, is to fix Title 4D. Title 4D is the funding mechanisms that create the disparity in parental time that father has to be stomped out except for every other weekend. That is the federal funding mechanisms that makes this whole thing go. So we can change state laws, but until we fix the federal water leak into the basement, we're just basically cleaning up water until it's fixed. So there are candidates that are running on that. I don't know if you've ever heard of the National Parents Organization, but they have phenomenal polls, they have research, they have all of the scientific data and basis to back up what we're saying, that kids have to have equal access to both of their parents after separation or divorce, or they're going to have a crappy ass life. So their statistics say you're 91% more likely to be elected as a U.S. representative or senator simply based on the fact that you believe in equal shared parenting. Because we all know or have been through, we all know somebody that's been through a contentious divorce that got screwed over in family courts and their rights were violated, or we've been the person that was screwed over and their rights were violated in family courts. We all know somebody. So it's a very broad reaching aspect that has to be fixed. So if you are elected to take Tammy Duckworth's seat, I would advise that. And there are a ton of representatives and federal senators that we can have this conversation with, that I have weekly conversations and text with, but we have to fix the funding mechanisms that fund this. If you shut the money off for the reason why there's a disparity and deprivation of human rights and the parental equality, then the issue fixes itself. What judge wants to give a ruling that a father or a mother, and we're starting to see this go the other way. We're starting to see that the fact that the father's rights movement is now made up of 40% women. 40% women are joining the father's rights movement because they're being targeted as the non-custodial parent in family courts. So the pendulum's starting to swing the other way, that we're seeing that we've got to have equality because there's just chaos and madness. So I would say that we have to focus on reform of the Title 4D, 4E situations. The Title 4E is the federal funding behind foster care. And that's why you see that the Missouri Director of Family Services was in the national news because Missouri's missing over 1,000 children, and she didn't report a missing. And then the FBI and the Missouri Department of Highway Patrol finds them 3 or 4 states away, and they're in sex trafficking rings. Well, why isn't she reporting a missing? Against federal law. It's a federal law. You report a child missing. Because the funding would stop coming in. It's all
about money with our government. Gotta love them.
It all goes back to the money. So we have to reform the Title 4E, the Title 4D, federal incentives to take. I can list literally probably 10 or 15 directors. The North Carolina director was arrested for her Cherokee County. Basically, they were issuing illegal orders and taking kids because they were getting federal incentives. I can post up 10 or 15 of those in the last 12 months that have happened. So the federal incentives, the money, is causing people to do illegal actions against the humanity of children just to keep that federal funding going. So that's number one. Number two is we need a standard, a codified standard. If you're going to get separated or divorced, just know if your partner isn't abusive, they don't have a chemical dependency problem, you live within a certain vicinity of each other, you guys are going to split custody. So stay married or split the children.
Or accept, yeah. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Like you said, as long as there's not an issue with one or the other parent, if they're both safe and in environments that are okay, then because we always do want to put the children first. That's very important to me and to a lot of people. The children need to come first and their safety needs to come first. But at what point, we're looking at, that's not what judges are looking at. That's not what the courts are looking at. They don't care about that.
Nope.
They much like our governor of Illinois, they care about the money. They care about where that paper trail is going. And, who can scratch whose back, I guess. I don't know. Illinois is pretty corrupt. So
we have to put the humanity back into politics as opposed to the monetary gains and values of what the programs, Division of Family Services is a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. And so you're not reporting children missing and they're being sex trafficked in other states because you don't want to miss out on your funding. Like, you should be in jail, lady, not the director of the Missouri Division of Family Services. Her name is Jennifer Tudball, and she's a despicable human being, and what happened under her watch is unacceptable. And yet, under her demotion, our governor moved her to the assistant director as opposed to the director. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. So that's a political move. It's a political
It is.
thing. I'm not happy about that. She should be in jail. We've got to have accountability in the family courts, the politicians. Everybody has to be accountable to everybody.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, it takes conversations like this, and where parents just need to realize. Like I said, there was one time, guys, and I'm going to just speak to the moms and dads out there. There was one time in your life that you stood before God. And let's just speak about the married ones, because either way, you stood before God, you said vows, you vowed to love each other, for better or for worse. But because someone does something that they don't like, it's war and the children become chess pieces. So, and I know I've repeated that, but that's what it's come down to. And the courts are allowing it because, like you said, it's a strategy move. It's a political hack. That's just how apparently Illinois thinks they need to function, and many other states, not just Illinois, so
I think moving even further than that. Yeah. You guys loved each other at one time. You had these kids, you had a beautiful life together. Then you decide you don't want to be together. All right, cool. Then she or he goes and gets an attorney, and then they tell you that's the devil. And if you don't paint them the way the devil is, then you're not going to see your kids. And so they're slinging mud, the other side's slinging mud. And basically what we have is a dog fighting ring in human realms, to where we take two dogs, we throw them on top of each other, and whichever one kills the other one is who gets custody of the kids. That's not how this was supposed to be. That is a chaotic asinine system that can no longer exist, and it has to be reformed.
So we have another question real quick. This is kind of a long one. So Tabitha
says, question, I had a dad come to my office. He had me crying. His son is hurt and he's 10 years old. Mom's a heavy drinker. Courts grant mom custody today. I am literally cried when he left my office. The guy is a conductor of a train. He works hard extremely. Last month, she had an accident with her son in the car and his son was injured. So bad he had to have stitches. They have children, 2 children together. I work with and for children. His son is extremely depressed. Allison, what laws would...
And I think she stopped there. So
no, it actually goes longer. But when they give a longer a question like that, you can't see it on these broadcasts live.
Oh, so nice.
Here's the thing, and let's talk about Illinois directly. Illinois has, and I don't have it sitting in front of me. I should have had it, but Illinois has a 50-50 shared parenting with the dog. The dog. I don't give a damn. It's a dog. Like, I love the dog. I got 2 bulldogs in the other room. I love those dogs. But I'm not going to fight you to the death over those dogs. Illinois has a law on the books that you must split the dogs or the family pets 50% of the time. The children are not applicable to that law. So we place the value of dogs, who are great companions. I'm not taking away from them.
Right.
But the dogs are placed above the value of the children in the state of Illinois. If that don't tell you that something's messed up in these family courts, nothing will.
Wow. I didn't know that.
I'll be glad to send you the state statute afterwards. We've been publishing
definitely.
that for a few years. And then anytime you send it to like anybody that you want to talk about, like, hey, when do kids get 50-50 equal shared parenting? And they're like, never. And you're like, oh, well, the dogs got 50-50 equal shared parenting. What about the kids? And they're like, sorry, that'll cost too much money.
Well, fellow Illinois residents, the dog now matters more than your child. Wow.
The dog has a law for 50-50 equal shared parenting in the state of Illinois. The children do not.
I absolutely did not know that. We're running as a candidate. We're supposed to, I was told, well, you're supposed to know everything. Well, first of all, this is my first time running. And second of all, I don't think anybody knows everything.
No,
I guarantee you, and I could bet money, most politicians don't know that.
Almost all politicians have experts that they go to. So if you were elected to U.S. Senate and you were to say, oh, I have an opinion, or I need an opinion, or I need to know something about equal shared parenting.
Right.
Almost all of those people have an expert. Like, you would call me and you would be like, hey, what's your opinion on this? And I would be like, that's a good, the dog has an equal shared parenting law, but the citizens don't.
So Tabitha's, the rest of her comment came in. I guess she forwarded it on to a different one. So she said this. I wrote, what laws would you change when it comes to the rights of children? My love for children has no measure, is what I was saying. Okay.
Absolutely. Perfect.
So what would I change? Well, first, let's get rid of this. First of all, I would pull Kenneth in my office and we'd sit down and have a talk.
You got to have those experts you trust.
Yes. And you got to have facts. That's just how it is. You have to have someone that can produce viable facts. And then you have to look at what's best for the children and what's best for the parents and, what's best for the household in general, as far as raising that child to become a productive member of society. I would look at 2 of the things that Kenneth talked about, and I didn't write them down. So you might have to say them again, what you wanted me to change. There was 2 things. And so I would definitely do that. And
as a federal senator, you have the ability to change the federal funding mechanisms that create the diversity and the chaos and the asinine systems in the state of Illinois. So as a federal senator, you can shut off the funding that keeps one parent or the other, usually it's the father, out of the child's life. As a local level, we need codified, it shouldn't matter what county you live in. It shouldn't matter what
Right.
judge you happen to. It shouldn't be a lottery draw for you to go to family court. It should be all codified for equality for all of the people, no matter what county you live in, to go to court, and you get 50-50 of your child. And then if there are some issues, like some people don't want to do that. And if they want to agree to that, if there's a dad that
Right.
walks in and says, yo, man, I don't want these kids, obviously we shouldn't force him to have the kids. But at the same time, one of my best friends in the world is a black father in the city of Kansas City. And they had they were together for 2 years. At month 4 after their child was born, she walks in and she's like, yo, dog, this ain't for me. I'm out. And the little girl's 4 now, and no one's seen or heard from her since. So it happens on both sides. You can't make parents parent. But for
Right.
the parents that want to be there, they should be allowed to be there. And no government institution, no revengeful, no chaotic parent should keep the other child out, or the other parent out of the child's life.
Absolutely. And I do agree with that. And a little background with myself. My husband, we lived in Texas when this happened before he moved to Illinois. But I actually helped my husband with paperwork, and just because he didn't know what to do, and I've done it. I did custody of my own kids. So I actually helped him get custody. And Texas is hard. Texas is hard to get a father custody. It's
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
hard. And
Texas, just as a little background music to back up what you're saying. So we talked about the fact that 83% of custody goes to the mom in the United States of America. Texas is the worst state in the union. It's 91%. 91% of all custody cases go to the mother in the state of Texas. We FOIA'd that from the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, and we now have those statistics, 91%. So you only have a 9% chance as a father to be a custodial parent in the state of Texas.
Well, my husband beat those odds. And of course, it didn't help that. Well, it didn't help that, she dropped him off and never looked back for the amount of time that we could get for abandonment. And then there was medical neglect that, he wasn't taken to the dentist, and I could prove it. And I'm smart enough to know, okay, take him to the dentist, get paperwork from the dentist, and, do that. And it just, luckily, not that I was friends with the judge, I just knew who he was, and I knew he was a fair judge. There aren't that many of those.
But isn't that a shame? Isn't that a shame that you have to show abuse of the child to be considered an equal parent as a father? Right. As opposed to just being an equal parent.
Absolutely. She had no problem throwing him in jail every 6 months, even though he was trying and paying child support. And if it wasn't enough, then she would, complain and moan. But,
Hold on. Debtor's prison has been illegal since 1890s. What do you mean he was thrown in jail for inability to pay a civil debt to another human being? Yep. Oh, we just changed the name to child support. Okay, yeah. I got you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm in a different kind of position because, like, with my kids, I had to make the choice. And I didn't make the decision; the judge did. The judge said, "This is what I think. This is how it's going to happen." And originally, my ex-husband had to complete A, B, and C before he could get total visitation, but there were reasons behind it. And even halfway through that, when I saw at first he was trying, and I'm like, if you're going to try, then I'll meet you halfway.
Yeah.
I don't care, but you're going to, my ex-husband, bless his soul, he's passed now, but he had cancer. It runs in his family. It's sad, but it is what it is. But he means, my middle daughter is a huge daddy's girl, and that's her daddy, and I'll never take that away from her.
Yeah, that's sad.
But but the fact that I had to make him, like, he would only want 1 kid instead of 3, and because I have 3 girls, and I have 4 kids, but 3 of them are his, and I had to force him to be in their lives. And I had to call him and say, hey, are you going to, I want this one. No, they're all yours. You're taking all or none. That was my only stipulation. I didn't care if he saw him. I wanted him to be a part of their lives. But
right.
I wanted it equal.
You helped make them. I'm over here going crazy. Why don't you take them all for the weekend?
I mean, and I didn't care. You know,
Right.
I
Well, I
wanted
got you.
him, you know, and it didn't matter to me, you know, it's like, you know, and here's another example with the courts, how unfair they are. I didn't even call for it. I guess it was an annual child support hearing. I guess you do them every year. I haven't done it forever, so I don't know. But you know, it was an annual hearing, and I'm like, why are we even here? We don't have a problem. I mean, I was only getting $92 in child support for 3 girls because he was on disability. So they would only take a portion of it. So I wasn't getting anything that mattered anyway.
Right.
But they called the court. It was an annual hearing. And the judge said, I'll never forget this. He said, well, we need to reevaluate this child support because of a job you had 15 years ago. We weren't even together. And I'm looking at the judge going, why? And I blurted it out and I said, why? And he goes, excuse me, ma'am. And I'm like, why? That makes absolutely zero sense. None.
Right.
And so we got through the conversation, and I apologize, guys. My earbuds keep falling out. We got through the conversation, and at the end of it, he slaps a fine on him, or not a fine, but court charges, and tells my ex-husband, you cannot leave this court without paying this, or you're going to be arrested today. And I'm like, why?
Debtor's prison are illegal, though.
And I said, why? And he said, well, that's how the law works.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And he goes, well, I can't tell you why. You're enforcing it, but you can't tell me why. And so my ex-husband at the time, he got really upset. Now, here's the backstory to that. That next weekend was his weekend. I was not fixing to tell my girls that their dad's in jail for something stupid and he can't see his kids. So what I did, I told the judge, I said, okay, what's the charge? What's the total? And I happened to have it in my back pocket. And I said, so it doesn't matter who pays it, right? Just as long as you get your money, that's all you care about. He goes, yeah. And so I said, okay. And I reached in my back pocket. I told Jimmy, I said, put your hand out. And he goes, why? I said, just put it out. He said, okay. And he did. And I put the money in his hand. I was like, go pay the stupid thing. And that judge looked at me and said, if there were more ex-wives like you, we wouldn't be in court. But I didn't, it was such just stupidity. And
so you loved your children more than you hated your ex.
Yes. And I didn't even really hate him. He irritated me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay.
It happens.
Because that's why we're not together.
I look at mine and I'm like, was I drunk the whole time?
Well, what was I thinking?
Right.
But you know what, though? But he gave me 3 beautiful children. So I'm not griping at all.
Exactly.
You know, I care more about my children's happiness and their betterment or their betterment to be good people and to understand that their dad loves them. Yeah. Because the biggest thing that I pull from all of this is just because mom and dad fall out of love doesn't mean that their love for their children ever wavers.
Absolutely. You're divorcing your significant other, not your children.
Right. Okay. So we've got one more and then we're going to end this because we're over the hour, but it's fine. So Tabitha again.
Tabitha says, yes, exactly. Sorry, but Alice and Elle know how much I love children, basically because of my background, which is a totally different topic. DCFS B-Day since 7 months old till I was 18. OMG, I've had to change laws with God's help, of course, for children, families who've been victimized by the system. I want to give back what God has given me, second chance. Stomach cancer survivors. I met Allison through Facebook. I loved her spirit from the start. She's so precious. I like Allison. I think Allison is a good candidate for the state of Illinois for the U.S. Senate seat. I think that she's going to help us create these issues. I want to connect with Tabitha and with Charlie and all the other guys that commented on here. You can find me at Facebook, YouTube, the Father's Rights Movement. You can find us at tfrm.org, and we work with many mothers groups because moms have realized too, like, hey, we're getting the short end of the stick here. We've got to change this. So once we all get involved, that's how we fix this stuff. That's how we fix everything.
Right.
But as far as your candidacy for the Illinois seat, I think that the platform you're running on and the issues that matter to people, we don't care about all that garbage. What we care about is things that affect our lives. What affects
Right.
our lives is that if our spouse comes in tomorrow and they say, hey, I don't want to be with you, we don't want to go from an everyday parent to seeing our children twice a month or not being able to see them at all. That affects all of us. So we've got to fix those issues. And in doing that, we lower school mass shooters, we lower gang activity, we lower kids going to prison, we lower teen pregnancies, we lower kids that use illegal drugs, we lower. There's 70 negative things that we can fix just by fixing the family court system and saying, if you're going to have kids together, you're going to have to split them 50-50 with fit, willing, and able parents.
Yes. So I got to say this real quick. I don't normally do this, but you have been invited on December 11th to a gathering that Charles Erickson is having in Buffalo Grove. So if you want to jot that down, those dates, and get with him in his name, you can connect there.
I will check into this. Where do I find will you send me the link to this after the podcast is done, and that way I can broadcast it to our platforms? And I mean,
you can take it off of my Facebook page. It's on my Facebook page, and then Charles is on my Facebook page. He's a friend of mine, and so you're making an impression. That's good. So I do want to pop up one more because I saw it, and this is important. And Monel said it. Let's
do it.
So Monel says DCFS needs to become more family friendly. That I agree with, and I think they need to be held accountable. And I think, in my opinion, everyone that is breaking the law should never be allowed to work in DCFS ever again.
So what she said in the second sentence, they need to work to heal families, not destroy the family. I could not agree with that as the fathers' rights movement more. What we have is a punitive family court system, not a rehabilitative court system. I don't care if the mom or the dad does have a chemical dependency. If they have a chemical dependency problem, obviously we shouldn't be letting them take the kids, but we need to rehabilitate them to make them into functioning human beings, to put them back into their children's lives, not be taking parents and kids and destroying them for the rest of eternity and all that stuff. We need to be fixing these issues, and we could use all of that federal money that goes to remove the father to have rehabilitative family court services instead of punitive family court services.
Absolutely. He has said Charles Erickson is the Freedom 515 Illinois lead organizer, and he would love to shake your hand. You are doing great things and going great places.
I appreciate that, Charles. I will get a hold of you after the broadcast ends.
So I have another invitation for you. Not this next week, but the week after. I'm actually doing a roundtable discussion.
Okay.
So we will have 10 people on here.
Oh.
Yes. So we're actually going to have some legislators on here. So that'll be interesting.
I probably know half of them.
Probably. So I'm very excited. We're actually going to have the attorney that we had on last night, Mr. Ramsey. He was talking about mandates and exemptions, medical and religious ones, and he brought up some good points about that. So I invited him back, so he'll be in it. So I love to mix it up. I've had roundtables where I've had Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians all in one show. That was fun. But
I bet it was.
the Democrat that I had on, Mark Flagel, he's actually a great gentleman. He is. I have mad respect for him, even as a Democrat, because he's willing to listen. He's willing to understand that not everybody's right on either side of the board. And I will end with this. I have always been a person, and now a candidate, that doesn't believe in the parties, but I believe in the people.
Yeah.
And that's what puts me apart. And even just take my candidacy away as a person. You know, I love relating. I love giving people a voice. I love understanding where they're coming from. And our greatest assets are ears, guys. And I think that implements in every situation, including this one. Absolutely. So am I a candidate and a female standing up going, hooray men and bad women? Absolutely not.
Neither
I want the children to come first with both parents. I don't want what happened to Chad to ever, ever happen again.
Absolutely. It should never happen anywhere for any reason. And
I don't think
parent,
a parent
should
in
lose their life.
general
Yeah,
should have to lose their life for trying to see their children.
absolutely.
So with that being said, God bless everybody. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for coming on. I've enjoyed our episode. It's probably now marked one of my favorites out of the top 5.
Well, thank you.
You're very interactive, and I look forward to working with you now and in 2022.
Absolutely, man.
You have a great night, and we'll see you next week, Monday night at 7:30, as always, with Citizen Watch, where your voice matters.